the credited players in the production, only 3 of them were native-born Americans. That's Humphrey Bogart, that's Arthur Dooley Wilson, who had a birthday yesterday, plays Sam, and Joy Page, Jack Warner's stepdaughter, who plays Anina Brandl, the Bulgarian refugee. He comes to Rick and asks for his advice. Of the credited players, only those 3 were native-born. Everyone else was born in Europe. Many of them were either refugees or had recently been, had fled the Nazis. I mean, whether they still would recognize that as their status is perhaps another matter. When you go into the extended cast, so all of those day players, those bit players, some 75 people who were employed, almost all of them were foreign-born. Many of the people who performed these bit parts, these so-called day players in the film, had experienced what's being portrayed on film. I give you just one example. Madeleine Lebeau, who plays Rick's on-again, off-again paramour, Yvonne, who gets jilted in the first act, and then returns on the arm of a Nazi officer. She had escaped.
And then tears up.
During the singing, yes, exactly. The close-up of the singing of the Marseillaise, which when she died last spring, the French cultural minister says, she will forever be known as the face of the Resistance. Anyway, she had escaped with her husband, Marcel Dalliot, who was a very, very famous actor at that time. He'd been in Renoir's Rules of the Game, in Red Illusion, and so forth. They had escaped via Lisbon. So just before the Nazis marched into Paris, they made their way to Lisbon, and they got out on a Portuguese freighter using forged visas. They made their way to Mexico. In Mexico, somehow they were able to obtain Canadian visas and cross the border ultimately into California. So they had experienced that. And so when she's singing the Marseillaise, thank you for drawing our attention to that, how could you have missed it? But those tears are real. And it's Dan Seymour, who plays Abdul the doorman, who says, he's making this film. He knew that they were speaking foreign language. He knew that they were from somewhere else. But it was in that precise moment when the tears are streaming not only down her eyes, but a number of the extras who were singing in that scene. He says, then he realized that they were all real refugees.